Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Smith. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's webinar. We're having an information session concerning Wolverine worldwide submittal of a residential well resampling response activity plan. Before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to go over our plan for this evening. I'll briefly introduce Karen Vorse from the Eagle Grand Rapids District Office. She will be our presenter this evening. Karen will be giving a presentation about the response activity plan that was submitted. And following Karen's presentation, we will enter into a question and answer session where you can ask questions of Karen and other Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy staff, as well as the Attorney General's office concerning the submittal of this response activity plan. Throughout this presentation this evening, we will be providing you with ways to submit written official comment. We have a public comment period that is open through July the 18th for this response activity plan. And lastly, I will be providing you with contact information if you have further questions about the plan. With this webinar, all lines are muted during the webinar, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. However, if you have questions or comments about the response activity plan, you can type your questions into the questions box, which is located in the GoToWebinar toolbar. That's located in the upper right-hand corner of your computer. It has a little orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it'll open and close that control panel. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing with you that location probably by the end of the week or early next week after we've had a chance to close caption the webinar. As far as how this evening's meeting will work, again, you'll have an opportunity, and you can at any time raise questions or provide comments about the response activity plan during the presentation. Also, again, as I mentioned, there is a public comment period that's open through July the 18th, and Karen will be discussing that further. But those comments can be written by email to the email address on the screen. And if we have anyone on the phone that's just listening in, that is EGLE-RRD, as in Robert David, dash House Street, HOUSESTREET at michigan.gov. Another way to provide written comments will be to mail those comments directly to Karen Vorse at Eagle Remediation and Redevelopment Division, 350 Ottawa Avenue Northwest, Unit 10. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49503. Again, when we get to the question and answer period, you can utilize the GoToWebinar control panel to reach the questions box to type in your question. If you would like to verbally ask a question or make a comment, there is a way to do that. In the control panel, there is a hand with a green up arrow. If you click on that and you indicate you wish to raise your hand, that means you're indicating you wish to make a comment, and I will see that. We'll discuss that again later on after the presentation. And of course, if you had changed your mind about asking a question verbally, you can click the hand with the red down arrow to lower your hand. So I'll repeat that again later on after the presentation, but it will be green up arrow to raise your hand and red down arrow to lower your hand. And with that, I'm going to get out of the way and turn over the microphone to Karen Vorse from the Eagle Remediation and Redevelopment Division. She is with the Grand Rapids District Office, and she will continue on with tonight's presentation.
Thanks, Les. Okay. So everyone should be seeing my screen now. me turn on my laser pointer. Okay, good evening on this beautiful sunny June evening. That's actually somewhat bearable temperature-wise. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Vorse. I am a project manager and geologist here in Grand Rapids District, remediation redevelopment here in Grand Rapids. And I'm going to be giving the presentation tonight to discuss Wolverine's draft residential well resampling response activity plan. So let's first start out just by going over some of the basics. I know this might be a repeat for some of you that have been on past webinars for this project, but for those of you, this may be your first time watching, so we wanted to make sure just kind of go over this important framework for which this work is being done. So on February 19th, 2020, a consent decree agreement was entered between the state of Michigan, Plainfield and Algoma Townships, and Wolverine worldwide. That became effective on February 19th, 2020, and was approved by the U.S. District Court Judge Janet T. Neff here in the U.S. District Court for Western Michigan. And this document is posted on our website at www.michigan.gov/Belmont. The document itself, including all of the attachments, can be found there. And this consent decree serves as the framework for all future PFAS response activities that are to be performed by Wolverine in what's called the North Kent Study Area. And so on this slide, you'll see a figure. It's actually from the consent decree, Appendix A, and it depicts the geographic area, which is the North Kent Study Area. And this is the area that the consent decree actually applies to. This area is roughly about 20 to 25 square miles. It travels as far north as 12 Mile, all the way south down to the Grand River. Parts of it are as far west as Pine Island Drive and as far east as downtown Rockford. You'll also notice on this figure the Rogue River. I'll highlight that. Does encircle the entire North Kent Study Area as well as, and we also have the Grand River that borders it to the south. And one of the main requirements of this consent decree is that it puts in place a process to which Wolverine has to conduct these response activities under Eagle oversight, which is why this response activity plan was submitted for Eagle review and approval. I also wanted to note that the consent decree, along with all of its appendices, did go through a public comment period in early February, and a public meeting was also held by the Attorney General's office and Dana Nessel herself. So we did accept public comments on that, and based on those comments, the consent decree was approved and became effective on February 19th. So the basic requirements of this consent decree include these items that I wanted to point out. Obviously, a major component of that is municipal water expansion. Additionally, filter operation and maintenance of filtration systems. Tonight's presentation is going to focus on the residential drinking water well sampling requirements. That's specifically covered in Section 7.6 and Appendix M, as in Mary, of the consent decree. And so that's where this residential well resampling response activity plan falls under the consent decree. Also within the decree is requirements for tannery site source control, as well as house street disposal site source control actions, groundwater investigations within the North Kent Study Area, and then also groundwater surface water interface investigations in the North Kent Study Area as well. But obviously today's meeting is going to focus on the draft residential well resampling plan. This plan is posted on our website, on the House Street Belmont website. Again, that's www.michigan.gov/Belmont. And we also have provided hard copies to the local municipalities in case you do not have access to the internet or computer. So you can go to Algoma Township offices, Plainfield Township offices, or the City of Rockford, and they also have a hard copy of this response activity plan that is available for for interested citizens to review. So specifically in the consent decree, residential well resampling is a requirement, is a response activity that Wolverine is required to do. Appendix M contains what's called a statement of work, and it proposed the general approach and rationale for Wolverine's residential well resampling in what's called the filter areas of the overall North Kent study area. So the filter area is basically any area within the North Kent study area that is not receiving municipal water as part of the consent decree. So there are some areas that will still rely on drinking water wells, and some of those are also going to be needing to have filters maintained. So any area outside the municipal water area is considered a filter area. So this scope of work that dealt specifically with this residential well resampling within these filter areas is included as part of the consent decree, which had that public comment period in February 2020. So what this Appendix M established was basically the general outline for this residential well resampling. So it's going to be requiring homes located in these filter areas, which do not have whole house filters, also referred to as point of entry treatment systems, or POETs, will need to have their residential well resampled. So homes that don't have POETs and have also only been sampled one time. So if they haven't been sampled at least 2 times as of the effective date, they're going to need to be resampled. The issue is some homes located within the North Kent study area only were sampled 1 time since the beginning of this investigation. And so a lot of those houses are going to be part of the first year's resampling approach, which we'll get into. So it will be a phased and staggered sampling approach that is based on the number of samples collected at each well historically, the historic PFAS concentrations at that home's well and the surrounding area, the well depth, the area geology surrounding the particular residential well, and then also groundwater flow. It's important to note that I know many of you have seen various presentations by myself and Mark Worrell, the site geologist in the area. This is a very complex geology, and so we had to take into account all of the information we've gained to date to be able to figure out this staggered approach. So the residential well resampling response activity plan, this actually is what contains the details regarding this residential well resampling approach. It has figures and tables included. It has the sampling and analytical procedures and protocols, and it also has the proposed schedule that this sampling is proposed to take place. So here I have a copy of Figure 1 from the response activity plan, the residential well resampling plan. And I wanted to go over the basic study objective and then point some things out on this figure that you'll notice when you're conducting your review. The study objective is to provide additional testing data to supplement data collected from groundwater investigations. And we're going to be using this to monitor for any potential PFAS migration. So if you look at this figure here, this is Figure 1 from the plan, you'll see a light blue area. This light blue area represents what's considered the municipal water areas where municipal water is being installed as part of this consent decree. That's shown in the light blue. So all of the parcels that are highlighted either with green or a beige, this kind of tan beige color, or this light pink purple color highlighted, you can see the actual parcel boundaries and the different colors highlighted in gray. Those are the parcels that are, located in the filter area, and the colors designate a few different things. So parcels that are highlighted in this green actually have whole house filters that were installed by Wolverine, and the majority of those have at least 3 sampling results associated with their house, at least 3, usually At least once a year, those have been sampled. So we do have a good amount of data in that for those homes. What you're going to see is, however, when we get to the light brown and the purple, those houses do not have whole house treatment systems or POETs, and some of them have only been sampled one time. And so those are in the tan, have only been sampled once, and then the purple more than once. And then you'll also see occasionally a parcel that is gray is now occupied, and some folks had declined sampling in the beginning or had independently tested on their own and did not want to be retested. We're still including them in this to see if they want to be a part of these resampling activities. Wolverine's proposing to be able to reach out and contact them again. So that's what this map depicts. So when you're looking at that, I just wanted to kind of go through that. It also shows the different sampling areas. So if you're a resident that lives in this area, you remember when this investigation started roughly 3 years ago now, we started out just around the House Street site itself, but then it started expanding into different study areas. So we have outlined in green the House Street study area, which kind of is this green outline that abuts up to what we call the Rogue River sampling area. That's on either side of the Rogue River, outlined in this purple. We also have the Woven Jewel area north of 10 Mile, outlined in this blue. And then just to the northeast of that, up to 12 Mile and the Rogue River, we have the Woven Northeast and 12 Mile and Summit sampling area up in here, just so you can kind of orientate yourself. And if you were included in one of those sampling areas, that's what these highlights mean on this figure. So like I previously mentioned, it's not just going to be residential well sampling that's occurring in the filter areas. There's also other requirements under the consent decree regarding groundwater monitoring and hydrogeologic investigations. So I wanted to include this figure. It's from the consent decree, Appendix N, which is the perimeter well groundwater investigation statement of work. And what you'll see on this, you'll see the light blue areas again for the municipal water expansion, but then you'll also see a bunch of green squares and green circles and some black squares with an orange, a yellow cross in it. And those are all monitoring well points that are proposed as an initial hydrogeologic investigation, where Wolverine is going to be monitoring PFAS in the groundwater to fully define the extent of that in those filter areas. Since we will have homes that will be relying on drinking water wells for drinking water, those areas will be having additional study and monitoring. Also, kind of around the perimeter of the whole North Kent study area is going to be a monitoring well network to monitor if any contamination is moving from within those municipal water areas to outside of those municipal water areas. So with all of this data collected, in addition to the residential well resampling that's going to be occurring, all this information is then combined together and helps inform and guide us regarding future sampling. So the residential well resampling response activity plan is broken up into 8 sections. First section and second section, the usual. Every report starts out with an introduction and kind of setting the stage, the background. It then goes into section 3, which is the general approach that was discussed in the consent decree in Appendix M. And then the proposed statement of work, section 4, we'll dive into a little bit deeper in the next slides, because that's actually the parcels and how they're proposed to be sampled in the time frame. Then section 5 discusses the sampling and analytical procedures. So it goes over the sampling locations, how they will be collected, how they're labeled, the shipping, the method, and the parameters that are analyzed for. There's also a section about data quality assurance and control. Also investigative derived waste, how that's handled, that's in section 7. And then also in section 8 is obviously the anticipated schedule of when this work is going to be completed. Attached at the end of the text portion of the plan are 6 figures. So you have figures 1 and 2, and then figures that are labeled A, B, C, and D. We'll go into those in the next slides. And then there's 4 tables also included. And we'll also discuss what's on each of those tables as well. So I tried to make a slide that as easily as possible, it summarizes how the residential well sampling is kind of laid out to be completed. So we kind of have 2 groups here. We have 43 parcels that are in group 1, I'll say, and those are parcels that have historic concentrations of PFOS and PFOA above 10 parts per trillion combined. And so because of that, they're less than 70, but they're above 10 for PFOA and PFOS. So they're going to be sampled during the first year of resampling, so this year, next year, and the year after. So 3 years after the effective date, each year, those 43 parcels will be sampled. Now, in the remaining parcels that I'm going to talk about are all parcels that have only been sampled 1 time and have detections of PFOA and PFOS below 10 parts per trillion when they were sampled. So in year 1, in addition to the 43 parcels listed above in group 1, we're going to have another 183 parcels sampled. These 181 parcels are located near data points that did have an exceedance of that were above 10 parts per trillion for PFOS and PFOA. Those year 1 parcels, those 181 parcels, those are all summarized on table 2 attached to this response activity plan. Table 1 has the 43 parcels listed in group 1. So then year 2, we add on another 148 parcels onto that sampling. And in addition to those 148, any parcel that was sampled during year 1, so out of that 181, that had concentrations exceeding 10 parts per trillion of PFOS and PFOA, or any new lower applicable cleanup criteria that's passed, that's below 10, those wells also have to be resampled. So we likely will have more than that, potentially, that 148 parcels sampled in year 2. We might have some from that 181 parcels resampled. In addition, we're still going to have that 43 parcels resampled in year 2. And then I think you're sensing the theme. Year 3, Wolverine is going to resample the remaining 141 parcels. And again, any parcel from year 1 or year 2 that found concentrations exceeding 10 parts per trillion will be resampled, including, in addition, the 43 parcels. So the year 2 parcels are identified on table 3 of this response activity plan, and then the year 3 parcels are identified on table 4 of this response activity plan. So if you actually want to check and see which year does my address fall on, you have tables 1 through 4 that can show you that. An important thing to note also is that once these 3 years of sampling are completed, Wolverine has a requirement to summarize the results and meet with Eagle and propose some sort of long-term monitoring plan within an actual completion report. That is specifically described in the consent decree in section 7.12 of the decree. And also any cessation of residential well sampling, so is subject to approval by Eagle under the consent decree as well. So section 4, which we just kind of talked about, this is a table I just wanted to add in here. It basically just summarizes what I just attempted to explain on the previous slide in table form. Some people find that a little bit easier. It does get a little bit busy just because we're including parcels from the previous year in, year 2, year 3. So I just kind of wanted to verbally explain it and go through it. But this is the table that just summarizes what we discussed on the previous slide. So figure 2 actually shows the resampling parcels identified on a figure. It is sort of a large scale, and so that is why Wolverine included figures A, B, C, and D, which kind of is a zoom in of particular areas so you can actually see the parcels and see what year they're going to be resampled. And so those sort of zoomed in areas I have identified on here. You have the Woven Northeast sampling area that has a figure specifically for that, and figure A, that's up obviously north of 10 Mile towards on the east side of the sampling area. We also have another figure specific to the Woven Northwest area where we have a lot of parcels close to each other. And then we have the Rogue River Southeast sampling area down to the south. That area is obviously more densely populated, and so we needed a figure to kind of show which parcel is being sampled which year. And then also the House Street Southwest area as well has a zoomed in figure. So those are figures A, B, C, and D. What you'll notice is on the legend shown here, those 43 parcels that will be resampled year 1, 2, and 3 are identified with a red circle. The year 1 resampling parcels are identified with a blue circle. Year 2 has a green circle, and then year 3 has a purple circle shown on the parcel itself. And something I'll note here again, just while we're on the slide, 43 parcels, those are all listed on table 1. Year 1 is listed on table 2. Year 3 is listed on table, or year 2 is listed on table 3, and year 3 is listed on table 4. So those all correspond to the tables. So this slide is just a zoomed in example. I wanted to go over what some of the data is shown on figures A, B, C, and D. This is specifically figure A, the Woven Northeast sampling area. And what you're going to see on this is, for example, this parcel that I have pointed here is showing the actual well screen elevation. So this home's particular well screen is screened between 697 and 687 feet. All that means is that the elevation is actually corrected for surface elevation. So you take the ground surface elevation minus the well depth to the top of the screen and to the bottom of the screen, and you get that the actual well screen elevation. So obviously the surface elevation affects the actual well screen elevation. So that's why you can see a lot of wells have varying actual screen elevations in relation to each other. Even though they might be right next to each other, they're screened at different elevations. And so all of that was obviously taken into consideration with choosing which wells would be sampled to get a good representative sample survey of different parts of the aquifer or different aquifers in general. And so just for this well, it being this beige color, you know, that means that it has no point of entry treatment filtration system, so no whole house filter, and it's only been sampled once. And the blue designation of the circle means it will be completed in the year 1 resampling round. And so Eagle is accepting written public comments on this response activity plan through July 18th, 2020. And those comments can be mailed to me, hard copy, to our district office, which will be on the next slide or in a couple slides, or they can be emailed to a mailbox we have set up, and that's eagle-rrd-housestreet@michigan.gov. So egle-rrd-housestreet@michigan.gov. After the close of this comment period on July 18th, we prepare a response document that summarizes all of the comments that we receive from the public, and then we do a responsiveness summary and we respond to those comments. We will be posting that responsiveness document on our House Street Belmont website as well. So if you go to that www.michigan.gov/Belmont, eventually that will be posted there. Just like the previous comment periods that we've had associated with other response activity plans, we're working on those responsive documents right now to get posted as well. And then after we review the public comments, take those into consideration and prepare the responsiveness document, we complete our review of the plan and provide our written comments and edits back to Wolverine for them to incorporate in a plan. So just wanted to, obviously we have a lot of moving parts under this consent decree. We're here today for this residential well resampling plan. You know, obviously we're having the public meeting today, and then over here we have the public comment period, which is from June 11th to July 18th. We've had 2 previous response activity plans open for public comment, which are now closed now. Those closed on June 13th. But we also have, just make a note, future response activity plans that have just come in or are to come in the future. And we'll be having public meeting dates for those to be determined, and then having public comment periods for those as well. We did just receive groundwater investigation response activity plans for Area 5, Area 6, Area 11, Area 12, and Area 19 this past Thursday on June 18th. So we're in process of getting those uploaded to the House Street website, so folks can start taking a look at those. And then we'll be obviously announcing at a later date when we're going to have the public meeting for that, and then have a public comment period. The next response activity plan we expect to receive is August 17th, and that's for the perimeter well monitoring investigation. And again, we'll have a public meeting for that and at least a 30-day public comment period. So if you ever want to reference any of these response activity plans or any of the recordings of the meetings from these or the presentations, you can go to the www.michigan.gov/Belmont website, and they are listed on that website for you. So we do want to hear from you on this. We will continue to accept comments through July 18th. Please submit them. If it's an official comment, please submit it to this particular email address, not my regular work email address. Please submit it to this email box, the eagle-rrd-housestreet@michigan.gov. And when you're submitting comments, just make a note which response activity plan you're commenting on, obviously, since we have multiple plans. And if you don't want to email it or you don't have access to the internet, you can mail your comments to myself via snail mail. Still perfectly acceptable and works just great. So you can make that attention to Karen Vorse at the EGLE-RRD office, and our district office address is 350 Ottawa Avenue Northwest. That's Unit 10, Grand Rapids, Michigan 49503. And if you have questions regarding this plan, you don't have to submit a comment without asking questions. You feel free to pick up the phone, give me a call at 616-439-8008. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. I can even get some coworkers to talk with you, try to address any of your questions, or you can shoot me an email with any questions. And my email address is vorsk@michigan.gov. That's V like Victor, ORCE, the letter K, @michigan.gov. And so that's the conclusion of this part of the presentation. I'll let Les take over for a moment.
Okay. All right, Karen. Well, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. And while we're waiting to gather the other panelists who will be assisting you with the question and answer session for the rest of the meeting, I just want to remind everyone that there's ways to, during the webinar, to submit your question or comment, and that's through the question box, which I have, actually have at least one question so far. And also, if you would like to make a verbal comment or question, you can raise your hand using the little hand with the green up arrow to raise your hand, letting me know that you wish to ask a question. And so I have a couple of questions already. And so while we're waiting for a few others to do that, I'd like to introduce the rest of the panelists. Joining Karen to answer questions the rest of the meeting here is, well, everyone knows Karen there. So next to Karen is Abby Hendershot. She's District Supervisor for Remediation Redevelopment District. District Supervisor for Remediation Redevelopment, Grand Rapids office. Mark Worrell, he is a geologist with the Remediation and Redevelopment Division. And last but certainly not least is Danielle Allison Yoakum with the Department of Attorney General office. And so the first question that I received is from Connie, and it's a multi-part question. So I'm going to read each part separately, if that's okay. The first part of her question is, what is the soil type in the PFAS source area, and how many feet or meters does PFAS migrate vertically and laterally in the soil?
Good question. Mark, do you want to talk about real quick the source area?
Well, it's so at House Street, it's in some areas there's a upper clay, kind of a thin clay veneer overlying sand. Some places it's straight sand. In the Wellington Ridge or the Woven Jewel source area, it's much more of a dog's breakfast. It's some areas are clay, some are sand, some are silt. A lot more heterogeneity in that source area. If we're just talking soil impacts in a vertical sense, I think at House Street it's about what 60 to 80 feet to water, and we have impact down fully. In House Street, it's a little bit more complex because you have an upper aquifer, an intermediate aquifer, and a deep aquifer. So soil impact would be if you're in an area of the shallow aquifer, potentially 30 to 40 feet deep, where the intermediate or in the predominant source area, 70 to 80 feet of soil impact vertically.
Okay. The last part of the question, thank you, Mark. The last part of the question is, does PFAS migrate below the groundwater table?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been, based on how PFAS behaves, it's highly soluble and mobile. And so depending on where you're at in relation to the source area, we're finding it throughout the aquifer. And in some cases, depending on how close it is, it does seem to be kind of sinking more toward the bedrock, where in other areas it might be following a preferential flow path within the aquifer itself, where there's coarser grain sediments and it can more freely move faster that way. So depending on your depositional environment, the geology you have, all of that has major effects on where you're going to find PFAS at your particular site.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I have another question from Sandy, and Sandy has raised her hand. So Sandy, if you're ready and would like to make a verbal comment or question, I'm going to unmute you and let you ask your question. Sandy, you have to unmute yourself on your end. Okay, Sandy.
There we go.
All right.
All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry, late in the day for this. So one question I had was, if the MCLs are lowered, which we're hoping that will occur, will that adjust this testing and retesting schedule then? And is that laid out somewhere as to what the anticipated schedule is?
So if the MCLs go through and we have a lower number than that 10 parts per trillion, if a house exceeds an MCL, then let's say PFOA goes down to 8, they then would need to be resampled as well. So the 10 kind of reverts to whatever the lowest MCL is.
And will, if the MCL is lowered and people then test higher than the new MCL levels, will they be offered POETs or other systems like that if they don't currently have that?
I believe the consent decree is written that as a placeholder until newer applicable criteria become effective, it's 10, but until new applicable criteria or MCLs become effective, it then reverts to the lower MCLs. So yes, they would then be offered a filter from Wolverine if they exceed an MCL. Right, Danielle? I'm not misquoting that.
That is correct. Yes, they will be offered a filter if they exceed either 10 parts per trillion or a new applicable MCL.
Perfect. And then my only other comment or question is, you said Wolverine will summarize it after the 3 years and propose kind of a longer term solution. Would it be possible for the Wolverine CAG to have some input into that when that plan comes forth?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we can, obviously that will be a public document and we can share that with you, and definitely welcome any input on that.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question. I just recently moved into the area. How do I know if my home has been tested or if it will be retested during this resampling effort?
Yep, that's a really good question. I would say if you're located in this area, you can go ahead and contact me directly with my contact information, and we can get you in direct contact with GZA, which is Wolverine's environmental consultant, who's been coordinating all of the sampling. And if you are included in this resampling, you will be contacted by GZA, by Wolverine. They're going to be, they already have a lot. Obviously, they've previously tested the majority of these folks, so they already have a lot of people's contact info. But if there has been property transactions, they will be sending letters out, and then obviously if they can't get a hold of someone, you know, observing social distancing, contacting people via door hangers or knocking on doors to try to get in contact with people if they can't get contacted with a letter or an email address.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question. Where can I review the resampling plan, and is the PowerPoint presentation going to be made available?
Yeah, so yep, this presentation will be posted on, and the plan itself is also posted on our MPART website, and that is that www.michigan.gov/Belmont website. That's kind of a summary of this investigation area as a whole, the House Street area and expansions. And so we've been trying to keep that updated. We have a presentation section, so the actual slides will be posted there. And then we'll also include a link to the recording of this webinar. I believe this gets posted on our Eagles YouTube page that we have.
Yes.
So you can go on that website and find it there. We'll link it on our MPART website as well. And the document, this draft document right now is posted on that Belmont website, the www.michigan.gov/Belmont.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Karen. All right. I have another question that's come in. I previously declined to have my home's water tested. Who do I contact to have my well tested?
if they don't have GZA's contact information, they most certainly can contact me, and then I can get them, or Mark or Abby. My contact information is on the screen right now, but they can call me on my cell phone, 616-439-8008. Or, they can shoot me an email, vorsk@michigan.gov if they're listening by phone, and they can't see my email on the screen. So those are two options to get a hold of me, and I can get you in contact with Wolverine's environmental consultant.
Okay. Have another question that's come in. This one's from Connie. Where is the spent activated carbon used to treat PFAS disposed of? In a landfill, which may cause more PFAS contamination? Question. That's the question. Does it go to a landfill, or where is it disposed?
So this is kind of getting a little bit off the scope of this response activity plan, but I'd be more than happy to discuss generally carbon, kind of the life cycle of carbon and whatnot. I do know that a lot of the carbon here in North Kent has been sent for regeneration, where they actually have to expose it to high temperatures to destroy the PFAS, incineration basically. And Calgon has a facility, the actual maker of the distributor of the carbon has a facility that they do that. Also, there's in Sarnia, Canada, there's a incinerator there. If PFAS waste does, for whether it's soil or granular activated carbon, if it is going to a landfill, it seems to be right now the climate, it's based on the landfill's preference if they want to accept a PFAS containing waste. A lot of times they are having to go to a hazardous waste landfill, only because that's the landfills are the equipped for PFAS and that. So it really depends on what state you're in, what the landfills, kind of the climate is of them wanting to accept PFAS containing waste. But just for example, some of the waste that's been generated in Kent County that the state's done drilling, we've had to send that to a hazardous waste landfill, or it's gone to Canada, to Sarnia for incineration.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Karen and panelists. I don't have any new questions that have come in. Karen, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you would like to just remind our attendees of before we close out?
No, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in live. I know you could have put it off and watched a recording, but we appreciate you taking the time out of your day and a nice day like today to watch this. This is really important work that's being done, and we look forward to hearing from you. Give us a call. Any questions, concerns that you have, we're here for you.
Okay, well, that will conclude this evening's webinar on the Residential Well Resampling Response Activity Plan, and hope to hear from you if you have any additional comments or questions about the plan. And thank you everyone for attending, and have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.